A little more than 2 months since an SUV was driven into a crowd at the Filipino Lapu-Lapu Festival in Vancouver, killing 11 and sending dozens to hospital. Recommendations have been made to make events of all sizes in BC safer.
Following the tragic incident, we commissioned a report by former Chief Justice Hickson to support local governments, event organizers, and public safety officials for future to provide clear, practical guidance to ensure future community events are safe this summer and beyond.
There are 6 recommendations in all, including mandatory risk assessments and standardized security advice. And for more on what is in the newly tabled report and what's not, I'm joined by Sarah Galashan. And Sarah, obviously the events of April 26 changed a lot of how things are run as far as public events in the city. What more can we expect to change with these recommendations?
Yeah, after April 26, a lot felt changed in the city. And if you were attending a large festival, there was certainly whether it was increased or whether it was just more noticeable because of what had happened. You saw, the dump trucks in place, certainly a more visible sense of police being present, especially in the immediate aftermath. Now, this report, what it does, it looks at communities right across the province, sort of canvassing municipalities, big and small, Courtenay, British Columbia, on Vancouver Island, all the way to the Lower Mainland, where we have communities like Surrey and Vancouver, where there are large festivals and gatherings that happen, and looking to them through a survey, trying to figure out what best practices are there, and as well, what kind of holes or differences, misses might be within the kind of community event planning that is going on there. And then from there, there are these recommendations. There are 6 in all, but starting with mandatory risk assessments for all events, regardless of the size. That should just happen. Not to say that security needs to be uniform here, but if there's going to be a gathering of people, there should be an assessment of what needs to be done. And then as well, make sure there's no jurisdictional confusion. And what I mean by that is who is responsible? Who gets to green light whether or not a road gets closed, or there has to be more police, or a blockade needs to go up? Make it very clear who is responsible for that. And to that end, we have events that involve community gatherings. In many cases, the organizers are, to some extent, volunteers. And so this report calls for there to be what they're calling a centralized hub, a place where there are resources that are, to some degree, standardized, maybe checklists, guidelines, that those individuals who are planning an event can then turn to and know what the best practices are when they are planning an event. Again, that's not to say that the security that you're going to need for every event throughout the province, given the different sizes of communities, would be the same. And that was spoken to at that press conference. Take a listen.
For example, Pride Parade is going to be a lot bigger than a neighborhood parade in Prince George. So we can apply some of the same lessons learned, but they're not going to be universal. So we're going to have to make sure it's not one size fits all. But this is a larger context of how do we make events across the province safer in future.
But let me just say, the future is right now. Festivals are ongoing. It's the summer in Vancouver. Annually, in the city of Vancouver alone, they expect about 2,000 festivals of varying sizes to take place. And just next week, we have a large festival that's going to take place in Vancouver's Chinatown. And so in terms of that, there are a lot of questions about timing and money that will be needed to support these recommendations that have been made. And neither of those 2 issues were addressed in this report or that press conference.
To be expected, this report is going to be picked apart. Can we talk about what isn't in the report? Because that's a big issue for people as well.
Sure, and that has been talked about even in advance of the report coming out, what would not be in this. Let me say that they certainly acknowledged the tragedy on April 26th, but the Lapu-Lapu Festival itself, the organization, what went right, what went wrong in terms of that festival, that's not in this at all. That is because what we heard from the commission and as well from the province, that's playing out in court right now. The accused in this is facing multiple murder charges, and so they're letting that play out in the court. So they don't get into that. They also, though, did not involve or contact the Filipino community organizers of the Lapu-Lapu Festival. So they were not acknowledged or communicated with in terms of what was going to come out in this report. And according to the mayor of Vancouver, the city of Vancouver, not in any real meaningful way, was either consulted. And I want to play you what Mayor Ken Sim had to say about that.
Will we take some of their learnings? Yeah, sure. But we're already doing our work. And when I look at how that report was put together, they consulted 5 individuals from the City of Toronto, and the City of Vancouver wasn't consulted in a meaningful way. So, how relevant will it be? I don't know. I haven't seen the report, but it is a little frustrating.
Now, the Mayor of Vancouver has long been a vocal critic of the province's Mental Health Act. He is one of many who insists that untreated mental illness is a major contributor to public safety, the lack thereof, he would say, within certainly the city of Vancouver. To that, the Mental Health Act is under review. It's a 6-month project, and of course, that's for another report.
All right. Thank you so much for that,
You
Sarah.
bet.
And let's dig into this update with some analysis. Cash Heed is the former BC Solicitor General and the former Chief of Police for the West Vancouver Police Department. And Cash is currently a Richmond City Councillor, and that's where he joins us from. Thank you so much for joining us, Cash.
A pleasure.
So, Cash, let's start with what you made of today's safety update.
I'm very underwhelmed of what actually was presented to the public with respect to this. They're weak recommendations, they're limited recommendations. They're recommendations that apply to things that are already in play, that have been in play for some of the larger police organizations in city over the last several years. So I'm very underwhelmed that there are some significant concerns with respect to what they're doing, how they're going about it. There's not much that we can garnish from Justice Hingston's report, and I'm sure that he was limited in what he could speak about. And the largest part of the problem is why this individual created this tragedy that put this inquiry forward to begin with. That was not addressed whatsoever.
I mean, given that assessment, there were 6 recommendations. Do you think, is there any one of those recommendations that stand out to you?
Well, risk assessment. You always do a risk assessment, and it's at varying levels. And as your reporter talked about, it's not one particular response you're going to have. You continually do that. And I know from Vancouver Police, they did it for the Lapu-Lapu Festival. Whether they could have done more, they did their inquiry soon after themselves and made some adjustments to it. They certainly included increasing guardians at various festivals that do take place, whether they're small festivals or large festivals. And they certainly, the next day, they even had, for example, heavy equipment blocking egress and ingress. They had officers with long weapons at these various strategic points. So Vancouver has done a lot to ensure the security of the area. I would look at this report and say it's more so for some of the outlying communities, but it doesn't give you a hub of where you can go other than some type of standard operating procedures. So there's a lot that needs to be done with respect to securing these events, finding out what happened at Lapu-Lapu, but this report doesn't do it for me.
Okay. And so, Cash, to that point, what would you have liked to have seen instead of this report as sort of the first assessment after that tragic event?
Well, number one is, and let's just make an admission with the report. The minister did not talk about a timeline for implementing these recommendations. When you talk about just 6 recommendations, they're not extensive recommendations. He did not even talk about the fact that they're going to accept those recommendations. He just said, we're going to take the intent of those recommendations. Well, these are easy recommendations to put in place right away. So right at the outset, you need to admit to this, you need to put it in place, you need to have it going forward. The other part is the cost of these events. They did not say that there's going to be additional funding available from the provincial government, whether it's to the local police agency or the organizers of the event, to ensure that they have the proper security in place to begin with. So that is very lacking. They could have looked at a centralized depository for some of the equipment that's required for these events that could be spread out all over British Columbia, whether it's those heavy barriers that are required at egress and ingress, or whether it's some other aspect of security at the point. But again, the largest missing part of this report that really takes away from anything that they're bringing forward is why Lapu-Lapu event took place. They did not address that. It's a mental health issue, and the mayor of Vancouver is correct in saying this doesn't give us much to work on at all. I am a clear advocate of the need for secure care. And when you have an individual that was involved in Lapu-Lapu, that 100 contacts in the health system or with the police system prior to him committing the heinous crime that he did, makes us wonder, why are we looking at this in the way we are?
And Cash, do you think this report in any way addresses the call for accountability that you often hear when you have a deadly tragedy happen like the Lapu-Lapu Festival?
Well, the accountability factor is missing in a lot of this. And I know whether it's the city of Vancouver, whether it's the festival organizers or the province, taking any accountability for what happened. Was this preventable? I think there could have been interventions if you had a comprehensive approach to dealing with this particular problem. And going forward, you need that comprehensive report or approach to deal with it. So again, going forward, I'm not sure this adds to the province taking any accountability, the city taking any accountability, or any of these festivals that come up. Certainly taking any accountability for how they're organized, how they're policed, and what we do to prevent tragedies similar to Lapu-Lapu.
All right. Well, Cash, appreciate your insight on this very important conversation that's happening not just in this province, but across the country.
Thank you.
Cash Heed is the former BC Solicitor General and the former Chief of Police for the West Vancouver Police Department.